school for, I've been doing GIS, I'm not going to say that, I've been doing GIS for over 25 years, and through many different disciplines or industries. So I say the one thing is that I'm not ever not learning. So it's changed, it's evolved since I started working 25 years ago. I started on PC with version 3.1, and then went to 8, and then worked on Unix, and then went back to PC again environment, and now that it's run through server, kind of the Unix system is not one that's used a lot now. So, but it's one that really, learning is an ongoing process, and one that I don't think any of us who are in GIS are ever not learning. So there's always new programs, there's new way of doing GIS now through Esri and ArcGIS Online. So I think all of it is just an ongoing learning process.
I definitely agree with Barb. I was thinking the same thing. The advancements in technology, as we all see it, are always consistently going at a rapid speed. So that's what I find in GIS. You know, you can never really stay on top of everything that's out there. You find the applications, you find the tools that you need for the jobs that you're working on. I mean, when I went to school, it was a one-year program for the application specialist at Sioux College. But like she said, we're going to be doing this process for as long as it's there.
Can be given direction. So you obviously use GIS for mapping, but do your colleagues use it for mapping?
Yes. We do have Debbie King. She's our environmental specialist, and she does a little bit of GIS as well.
What does she use it for?
I don't know if she would better ask her.
I use it for locating where groundwater soil samples, marking the trails, just in general. I'm just starting to work it myself. So and again, it's just an ongoing process.
At Mushkegowuk Council in 2010, when I came on, nobody used GIS, and I was given a computer and said, build our database and bring it to the communities. So we have 8 communities. There's 7 communities in Mushkegowuk Council. We also work with NOFNEC based on VCRs from them on specific projects. So I've been working with the communities individually, building their capacity for GIS, doing training, their systems, building those, and then as well as within the council in our office as well. So we have different, I'm in Lands and Resources Department, but we also service the other departments that are in our organization. Kim, who introduced us, she's our GIS education specialist. Before that, she was our mining exploration advisor, and so she would also work with communities, working with plans and permits applications that came into the community, and how they would react to those and put in their responses based on traditional knowledge that we had gathered through different projects, and making sure that those values were protected from any resource extraction. So yes, we try to encourage as many people as possible to use it.
Yeah, us too. We have other colleagues with Moncton First Nation that have been using the GIS for the last 3 to 4 years with forest management plans as well as biodiversity. Our GIS system was purchased in Moncton First Nation in 1996. They did some native values and some other shoreline classification, but it really did go on a stagnant for many years until I went and got educated with it. And then about in 2007, we really kind of rebuilt that system and started doing a lot of baseline collecting and stuff like that.
Okay, what challenges do you have with using GIS in your daily activities?
The fact that it is a computer it is a challenge all on its own. Sometimes computers have a mind on their own, so sometimes you're waiting for geoprocessing things to happen. Can be very timely. Those I find are challenging a little bit. One of the biggest challenges that I found is that we don't have a GIS enterprise server-based kind of thing, so you don't connect with other colleagues that might be working on it. So we kind of build our own system, and GIS, you can create a file within seconds. Within like an hour, you could have created 10 to 20 different files when you're manipulating data or trying to find relationships and stuff like that. So it could be a very cluttery, messy system, so you have to really find and create a system that works and that you can pass on to other colleague members, and that I find is probably one of the most challenging things. When it comes to tools and applications, there are many resources online. You can ask Google and they can lead you in many directions, but I would say the system file management of everything is probably the most biggest challenge for us.
I don't necessarily find GIS challenging. I think what's challenging is the new stuff and how quickly it's coming out. There's a lot of money that goes, R&D money that goes into, specifically we use the SRI products of our GIS, so it really is hard to keep up with all the new things that come out of our GIS. And that's what I find challenging is to stay on top so that I know of what I can offer and what things that we can work with the communities on. Other than that, just probably crashes. It's working with our GIS is very computer intensive, work intensive. You really have to have some pretty high-end computers to run huge, large databases, which tend to crash once in a while. If you click the key, your mouse too many times, you're done, it'll crash. So you really have to be patient when you're actually using your mouse.
Yeah, what they said. No, it's just, I wouldn't say it was a challenge, but if you don't use it regularly, you tend to forget like certain routines and stuff like that. And yeah, the crashing thing is just the real pain. So yeah, your save button is probably your best friend.
What are your favorite applications in mapping in GIS, or what programs you use?
I use Esri, ArcGIS. There are a few other GIS programs out there that aren't, I don't know, they seem to be competing with each other or something. I don't know, it's kind of confusing. Everyone seems to be using shapefiles and stuff like that. Yeah, that's it for me.
As a professional cartographer, so the thing that I want to use the most, of course, is ArcMap, because it's the thing, to me, it's the gravy of GIS. It's you put all the work into your database, and probably 80% of your time is doing database manipulation, data entry, data queries, and then finally when you get to show it on a map, that's just like, euphoria. And that's the thing that I love the most, is actually using ArcMap. Neat things coming out, ArcGlobe, ArcScene, there's some pretty cool stuff that you can do, fly-throughs, and some 3D mapping, which is pretty neat. But yeah, for me as a cartographer, it's definitely ArcMap.
Yeah, like Barb said, I love ArcMap too. That's what we use. I never really was introduced to any other of the open source GIS softwares that are available. I know there's many. There's like QGIS, or there's MapInfo, and those are free online sources that you can use for software, and for what you're doing, they might be beneficial and work great. Where I started working with one of the First Nation, they've already had the Esri purchase. They were already purchased, so I just jumped right in using that tool. Now now for us, it would be very hard for us to go into an open source because of the applications that Esri could provide you with. A lot of the applications that I like that Esri provides through ArcMap is what you can do with a digital elevation model, you know, and being able to delineate watersheds through that, finding your contours and all this stuff. So I always really like the elevation models, or bringing in some sort of Landsat, which is like kind of remote sensing, and they're using these highly to classify vegetation, different vegetation types, just through wavelengths like the RGB band colors and stuff like that. They can tell what's growing in different areas. So I think those are some of my favorite applications with GIS.
Just to add on that, yeah, there are hundreds of proprietary softwares for GIS, and many you have to pay a little amount, and then right up to ESRI, which is thousands of dollars to get your license, and then maintenance for every year. And some will say, well, have you tried the other ones, right, Kim? We'll say, you know, and I'm like, no, because I'm not even interested. I find that what I need to do is right in front of me, so I'm actually not going to take the time to go in and see if there's another one that is not going to do what I know I can already do. So in ArcGIS. So it totally depends on your budget of how much you have to be able to spend. Because it is very expensive to run ArcGIS, but they put so much money into their R&D at ESRI, so a lot of the new products that we see come out all the time and we can use is a result of the R&D money that they put into it.
There was
How do you suggest communities use GIS in terms of land use planning and climate change? One of the first presenters this morning said include climate change in your land use with the GIS application. Or what would you suggest the information be collected?
Like you're saying, what software they should put it in, or where they should collect it from?
Yeah, well, like the information they collect.
Okay. Right. Like I know through like Natural Resource Canada, like and MNDM, you can get a lot of data through them for climate change, like Environment Canada and stuff like that, and you can get those layers from there. For our GIS that we use with Esri, all those file types, they go in very easily. When if you're using another mapping software that might be cheaper or free, you might not be able to get all that data in. You might not be able to do what you want to with that data. There's tons of places where you can get data from. Land Information Ontario, if you have an agreement with them, they have tons of data, hydrology data, invasive species data, species at risk data. Like they have all of that available. It's available for First Nations. You just have to have an agreement with them. Sharing agreement, we don't share things when it comes to our native values. That's protected to us, but you could be like sharing other stuff you find that you're willing to share species at risk or invasive species, and lots of good data there. I don't know if I answered your question.
I'll give you a quick rundown of what we did at Mushkegowuk Council specifically for land use planning, and GIS, our center, Cregio, actually, you've got a page that was sent out, and that's our center, our GIS center. And we started in 2010 because of the result of the Far North Act. And so we had money given to us from M&R so that we could collect values, because one of the biggest thing that we want to make sure happens is through land use planning that the values that have been in the past are used for the plan is respectfully created using those that traditional knowledge that each of the community holds. And so we had two projects that happened. So in the north, through land use planning, we had M&R fund us. Through the south, which are the far northern line splits the Mushkegowuk territory in half. So the south, the funding came from M&DM, and it was in a response to the Modernization of the Mining Act. And there they gave us money so that we could collect values, so that when applications for plans and permits came into the territory, we would be able to put the data against where we had traditional knowledge, no traditional knowledge at the time. so that we could do some consultation with the companies while they're obligated to consult with the First Nations to make sure that the values were actually protected, that they weren't going into areas where there were either sacred sites or there were areas that were deemed appropriate for maybe they wanted conservation areas or there are things that they wanted protected. So those were two areas that of why we're collecting TDK and how we're using it in land use planning. Did that answer your question? The climate, I'm not 100% on, I'm not a climatologist. I can use the data and work with somebody who is a climatologist, like Dr. Dave. I'd love to sit down with him and figure out how we can build that into land use plans, and that's probably something that I will be doing in the future for our communities.
One of the simple applications is that you can layer data, right? So you can have yearly events of, we had a flood this year, and then you can bring it up and make it apply to different changes as you're seeing them. Just my little piece there.
I would like to say something about this and work on this kind of GIS data collection that I'm going to come out of presentation. Again, I don't want to stop a meeting, you get out of the I've been trying to get training on that GIS. Keep getting more up. And as far as I know, my data collection, they don't seem to be recognized by the industry again. I hate to say this, but I have experience because one time they said we had collected before it was a paper mask or nothing. Nothing. I don't know, how do they want those data collection to look like? How do they want it? Do you know exactly how they want it? I know there's another one that it's called a SOC. It's another one. Now they want us to do exactly the way they want, the way they put it on I guess it's a mining. The First Nation have no say besides they want their protected. For me, I would rather listen to my First Nation elders or people depending how good they want their various or whatever spiritual stuff that they want to protect. I don't think the government should be the one directing us, telling us. It's almost like a dictatorship if they're going to do that. So I'd like to know how we really do that to be sure to do what our First Nations want to do to protect their various stuff. For example, there's one family member that they want to protect that area. It's in one area standing there. They want to do about 200 meters or not 200, wherever, hectares around or something more than that. And then I was told, no, that's not allowed. Not to be 75 hectares. Oh, no, nothing, 25 hectares. That's what I was told. 25 hectares, that's the way they put it in my mining. Now that's when I said, that's the situation. If they want us to do it, I didn't know. Then I'm giving the First Nations a chance to decide how much they want to protect the traditional burial sites or other values. We have a lot of that in our area. Can you tell us how we can manage to do that?
So you've got two parts to your question.
Yeah.
I'll answer just the latter first. And you'll hear about it tomorrow. There's a talk from Ed Sutherland on the Mining Act and the protection that they're doing in Saskatchewan. But just briefly, the sections that you're talking about, so under Section 35 of the Mining Act, you can withdraw up to 25 hectares of areas of cultural significance, and it is limited to 25 hectares. But on the other hand, there is Section 51, which allows you to take, and it doesn't say how many hectares you can withdraw. So Ms. Nabby Cree, lift your hand up there, Les. They worked on, you can talk to him about this. They have a cultural area called Manitou Mountain, and it's a spiritual area of significance, not only to Ms. Nabby Cree, but for the area Cree people, and probably not even more than Cree people in the area. They worked with MNDM to define the area that they wanted withdrawn, and I think it's close to, 400 hectares, I think. And it's just, and they worked with the community and M&DM, did ceremonies at the site, defined the area, which worked for both M&DM and for the community. So there are those two sections under the Mining Act. One is a fixed area, one is an area which you can do larger. The second part, if you actually do 3 points. The second part was how can you use the values within different industries. So just this spring, we're now working with different forest industries with M&R, having their values brought to the table for protection within their forest management plans. So we're having consultations with M&DM, the company, or M&DM, M&R, not M&DM, sorry, M&R, the company, and Mushkegowuk, and the communities of Mushkegowuk, where the areas that they want to do harvesting on, we're letting them know where our values are, and they actually are treating them with respect, and we're working at withdrawing those areas from the community plans. The forest management plans, they're putting AOCs, and we've negotiated the different distances. The forest management plan has a specific size for each of their AOCs that they have in their management plan, but through negotiations and consultation with the companies, we're able to have larger AOCs put on a lot of the values that the communities want protected. The third thing is, there's an email on that piece of paper that says creegeo@mushkegowuk.ca. We'd be happy to work with your community on training and any other GIS database needs that you have.
Is that including a mining company that has been going in our traditional areas? They're the other mandatory other ones that are going ahead and do whatever they want to do in that area. I don't think they're trying to recognize what we're doing in there. They just want to go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer you on that other than stop them from going into your
Also
territory.
in the forestry industry, out of the mining company or any other industries.
Yeah, so far, Mushkegowuk anyway has developed a very good relationship with our surrounding forest companies. Mining, I can't answer that
Are your
question.
plans complete?
They're going in 2 weeks to be signed off. Yeah, so they are.
Well, I guess that's what I'm asking is I need to know what the mining company as well.
Yeah, I can't answer that
If you guys
question.
don't know it, then what can you do to find out what the mining company? Do you have mining companies going into the traditional areas?
Yes.
And where you're coming in this territory?
So actually, Kim might be able to answer that better because she's worked with communities specifically on the applications that have come in for exploration. I know that there is consultation between, sometimes the companies aren't willing to come in, they don't want to talk to you. And then sometimes they are willing to come in and talk and consult. And as far as I know, I don't think anybody's thrown up a roadblock yet, but they seem to have been working it out. A specific example maybe we could talk about, and we could just help you get some guidance.
I'll set you up later. David?
Huh?
I'll set you up later. Get your answers.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah, as far as training goes, there's a company here as well in Thunder Bay, CE Strategies, also known as Northern GIS. They do data storage, they do actual training. They are mobile. They can come to your community as well. As far as
That's
training
our
goes.
consultant. Those are our consultants.
Well, I know in Montecate First Nation, and I don't work in office, so some of our other employees could answer this question a little bit better. But I do know with our native values or our traditional ecological knowledge, the more points that we gathered and on our river, our Montecate River that comes into Lake Montecate where our First Nation is located, we collected a lot more points. We go out to the native value sites. We've been using that river and we've been starting canoe journeys with our youth on that river for the last 3 years. So since that happened, they've made an agreement and they've actually gave us more of an easement on that river to protect it. Like it's not given to us, but they put an easement. And I'm not the one in the office, but I believe it's 100 meter, I can't confirm that, but they added a 100 meter easement on there. It's not much, but it is at least something now. And the more that we continue to get points, and when we do this, we don't give them the exact information as to what is here and what is there, but we do tell them if it's archaeological, if it's medicinal, if it's a species that we're worried about, and things like that, or a hunting ground that we use. We don't say that part, you know, but they have done that for us, and that was just recently in the last year or two. So, more points, the better it is when you're working out those relationships with them or the town or.
I'm assuming, has your job been made easier by using GIS? Is it a yes? No, okay. Do you have any suggestions for those who are starting to use or want to learn how to use GIS? Not necessarily just for land use planning, but other applications?
Well, like I had mentioned earlier, I guess where I would start is, depending on what you're going to do, I would go look for the open source. I would see if they can do what you want to do with that, with your mapping. But when it comes to the TK or the native values, you do want your data more protected, so you probably don't want to really go on Google or My Maps and start collecting your data that way. And I guess like going through open source free software, you're gonna have that problem with privacy more so than if you went through an Esri software where there is a little bit of confidentiality agreements, and that would be my opinion to that before starting something else.
I think you really need to look at what you want to use it for. If it's for a specific industry or specific topic, then gather your data that you need to support that work that you want to do. And then once you've got that data or understanding of the data that you want to collect, then you need a system, you need to build your system, you need the software, and then you need to have some training. Find somebody who can give you training specifically on what you want to know about, not the broad spit, not the broad, what is GIS thing. You need to touch on that, but you need some more specific training on what you need to do.
I was given like a bunch of old maps done from like probably trappers and fishermen and hunters and stuff, and they were all just like dots on a map and circles here and arrows there, and the pain was actually putting this into the database, digitizing it and all that. But once it was done, it's awesome. Our database is like really huge right now, and everything is electronic and ready.
Here, could you explain how you guys use the GIS with still water down by Angler? That time you guys went down there on that field trip with it, the water and all that stuff. You know, with still water by Angler that time?
Stillwater Mine, which is located near Marathon, about 4 hours away from here, east. There was a settlement, a family settlement there at Angler Creek. We went to actually verify old structures. I'm not sure if there are any burial sites there or anything like that, but and I'm not sure if anyone knows what Pakasaw pits are. We found a bunch there, I think about maybe 90 or so, something like that. That was our project with Stillwater Mine.
I would ask these guys to bring us an example of a useful trick, if any of you are currently working with GIS or anyone at your community working with GIS. But we just got 2 questions at the end, so maybe we'll do the questions and then we can go right into your examples. So I just asked about starting up GIS, and now I'm just wondering what other applications other than mapping can it be applied to. So housing departments, I'm just thinking at the local band level, what other positions or people? You say that there's a lot of people in Mushkegowuk using it, so.
Yeah, GIS can be used in any industry, so anything you can think of, you can use it for it, and there are applications for it. In our own internal departments, our housing department was our first one that we decided that we do some work with our tech services department and get our communities, their municipal infrastructure into our GIS so that they can look at starting on preventative maintenance in the community. So one of the builders, building inspectors, he and I were having a discussion about his work that he did. So he goes out with his clipboard and he goes to a house and he starts writing down information. And then he takes a few pictures, and then he goes to the next house and he starts writing some stuff and takes a few pictures. But gets back to the office, and then he's got to figure out all of these pieces of paper and all of these pictures. He could have 100 pictures, and which ones, what with what. So he got mixed up sometimes, and then his reports had to go into INAC. So we worked, there's a new app called Collector, and Collector is an iPad app. They have it on Android as well. And you can go out into the field and you can use essentially everything that he did on his clipboard, he can now do on his iPad. So we made an app so that we took all of our housing buildings, he could click on a building, we made populated pop-ups so that he could put down his information. It took the pictures as well for that house. He came back into the office, downloads, and it populated his report for him so that now he had a couple steps in between, but now that's just one example of an add-on that comes through ESRI, an app that it's going to make his life a heck of a lot faster, and so he's not redundantly adding information over and over, and he's able now to do a lot more quick things with his time and his reporting, so that it's faster.
As it be applied to traditional values, even it's as good as the housing thing. Like say you have a burial site, you can click on that little file and it'll give you like all the info, where it is, who it is, hopefully, which elder gave the interview, if that geographical coordinates. You can get quite specific with all of that. So yeah.
And yeah, like Barbara had mentioned, GIS can be used everywhere. I've seen them using it as a real time in a hospital situation where they wanted to make equipment, like where they wanted to monitor where equipment was going in case it was exposed to somebody with a virus or a certain kind of bacteria. Then they could real time track this and be able to quarantine people properly if it needed to be done. I know they were looking at this within the Sioux area hospital, but this was when I was in school, so I don't know how far it actually went to, if they're actually still using it, but that's just one thing. I mean, you can use it planning your garden, you can use it planning your conference with your tables, you can do anything you can think of, you could put in GIS, but the thing is that it's a database, so you could put any information that needs to go with that spatial picture, any words, any reports that need to be scanned, it can all be hyperlinked with that one point, that one spatial feature, and that's the real benefit of GIS.
Can you share what equipment, materials, and costs are needed to start up a GIS program?
I think we kind of talked about this a little bit. Like I said, it can go anywhere from being free to small costs, and to what we have set up at Wanapate First Nation is with Esri. We pay about $2,000 to $2,500 a year for that license. They provide us with technical support when we're ever in need of help on how to do some of the applications. We have that. That's as far as we went. I know you can go in even higher and be paying like tens of thousands, $30,000 to get enterprise, which means that if you have a company and you've got 10 people you want working on GIS and you want them all working on, for example, in a city, a subdivision, and they're making changes, well, those changes from that one person are going to be spread, and everybody that's opening up that file will now have those changes. We're so small times, we never had to go to that level, but you can go to those levels with GIS, and the cost can get very big.
Yes, they can. We have the council GIS, and then we have our community GIS, which all feeds into the council GIS. We don't have an actual enterprise GIS, but we're right on the edge of, we probably should make that jump and go to enterprise GIS. So we have a data license or a software using license with ESRI. So it's a 3-year, $45,000 agreement where we pay $15,000 a year, and then all of our communities can use the software. If you did not have any type of agreement, a single standalone software license is $26,000 now, which is kind of unattainable for a lot of people. There is a $6,000 license one-time standalone, and then there's also ARC. You can use free, you can get accounts for ARC GIS online, which you can do so much more information and data building now. So because we support the communities, we pay for the licensing, and we do have a server. Our communities can, it's faster because of the connection. So it's all about where your communities are and about your connections. If you have low broadband width, your connection to, say, Peawanuck down to Timmins, Peawanuck's on satellite, there's no way that we're going to be able to send data back and forth. So we would put on an external hard drive, we would send them information every once in a while, just update their data. But if some of the communities are connected to Timmins, and so we have a VPN pipe that they can log on and get information through what we maintain in Timmins. So all of our main databases are maintained here in Timmins, and then we ship that out to our different communities.
All right, I think you're off here. Storage space, storage. Or can you tell us what kind of storage we need? I've been trying to do something about that, but I'm not going anywhere. I just need to know. Can you tell these people that are here what kind of storage we need?
Yep, sure.
Is it just any small storages, or just, I don't want to say what I got in mind?
It really depends on the amount of information you have. So the computers that you have, GIS needs a lot of computing power. So you need a quad-core computer. You need as much RAM as you can afford. The minimum of 8 gig, I would go 32 to 64 if you can actually pay for it. Or if you have the funds to pay for it. I would definitely have a terabyte drive. I would have 2 if again, and it's all based on if you can afford it. You can run ArcGIS on a laptop, which we have on here. It's slower than you have a desktop. If you're doing number crunching, you need a desktop because you can build a desktop with a lot more capacity than you can into a laptop. If you're on a server, you want to make sure that you have some redundant swap drives, so a RAID system, so that if one of them goes, you can just pop up the other one and put it in. It really depends on what kind of data that you have and how much storage space. If you're using a lot of imagery, if you have imagery for Ontario, that's petabyte size, so you need massive storage space. It really depends on the data that you're going to use and how much is going to be, how many communities or how much space you actually need.
What's a petabyte?
I just want to say something before that. What I see myself is we need a better storage space because you need to have a backup as well in order not to lose any information, other information you have. You just have to use what you just mentioned, and there's nothing, they're not worth using those things. You must just do your database or your information out somewhere. You got to have a better database for that. Because whatever you collect, it's going to have to last for a lifetime. You cannot just collect it and mix it. You put it in a server, maybe whatever, one small server, and that doesn't have much. And if something goes wrong, there it goes, that's the end of it. I experienced that in our community. They had some kind of they used a computer, desktop computer, and the building burned down, and that was it. They lost all information. There was no backup. So everybody had to make a better preparation in order to collect those kind of information. That's the way I see it myself. And I've been trying to do something like that, but it's not going anywhere. Because what the information when I'm collecting now, it may not last a lifetime. Once something goes wrong, that's the end of it. Our collections will be gone. Somebody else will have to start over again.
So anytime you collect data and it's something that you don't want to do twice, you have to make sure you back it up. So whether it's a laptop or if it's a desktop, desktop or server, you want to have a backup system which is size comparable to whatever system you're using. One thing that I do make sure is that our data is stored on a server and that we don't store it on our laptops, because laptops can be stolen. And so if there's information that you want to make sure is secure, it's not stored on a laptop. So our information is stored specifically on our servers, and then if somebody needs that information, they may throw it on a data stick or something to be able to use, like for a presentation or something, but I definitely would not want to keep your data stored on a laptop. You want to make sure that it's on backup system and then in a fireproof safe as well, your tapes.
That's what I was saying. And you know, actually, one other thing I would say is when I was working with one of the companies, EMS, they're a pretty big exploration company, and when he came in and I was doing some geophysics for him, and one thing he recommended to me is I used to have, like she said, you know, all the files on the laptop, not really safe for the privacy issue, but his recommendation was like, it's slowing down your computer. You're having a lot of stuff, so I have a 500 gigabyte space for storage, but if I'm using all my data, my imagery, and all that stuff is on there, that's why my GIS might be running slower and other things might be crashing. So he suggested, whether you have the terabyte or the petabyte, you know, to go with having those as your hard drives on the side, having all your data on there, and the only thing that you have on your laptops is the software that you need to use the data with. That was just a recommendation.
As soon as you're done using it for the day, it goes back into the fireproof safe. It doesn't stay sitting on your desk.
Again, for traditional values, anything like digital, I guess, recorders, if you want to interview your elders, if they agree to be interviewed and recorded, not all will. Cameras, digital cameras, for site verification and whatnot, and of course, GPS. And that's it.
Can you guys show us a trick? You can fight over who goes first.
Well, I don't really have tricks. I was just going to show what we've been using GIS for in our community and a few maps, but if you guys have yours, go ahead. If not,
No, you go ahead.
Okay.
I'm gonna move because I don't want to be my eyes will last.
Right. Okay, well, you know, before I show you with GIS, I just wanted to show something very Google Earth. And one thing that everybody can get their hands on really easily, and I just thought it would be neat to show you, is through Natural Resource Canada, you can get this Canada Lands layer. And right here, it has all of the First Nations. You can see it. I'm just going to zoom into where our community is. And then the more I zoom in here, just a note if you haven't seen this, I don't know, maybe people have seen this, but for all the First Nations, they now have in this layer. So you can see all of your parcels and your community. It's pretty handy that it's right there for us all now. But just another thing, they also have abandoned mine sites too, you know, and just for an example, this is what's going on around our community. It has been going around from, like, we have a lot of mining. We're in the Sudbury area, so the Nickel District, and there's a lot of abandoned mines you can see right around us, and mining operations that are constantly going on. So I just wanted to show you that just because I thought it was, I know Marla. With the, yes. Okay, and I just got a quick PowerPoint. I know we don't have a lot of time here, and I just kind of just wanted to give you an idea of what Matei has been doing. This was a presentation we had, that's why you'll see it all set up. But here we have a directional map, just people trying to locate our community. We map our watershed, which is our stewardship area. This is the area of our concern, what we want to protect. This is what I was talking about when it came to like the file management and how that could be one of the biggest challenges of ours is we have so many file types. So back in 2011, we created a manual that just goes through the way we save our files, where they're saved, a little bit demonstrations of how to do some applications in GIS as well. We wanted everything to be consistent, so we really developed kind of like a title bar, I guess you can say, which includes all our information. This is something that we thought would be great because every time we create a map, they'll always be the same. The title block. This just goes over some of our single user information. You know, we were talking about the TUS, and I'm not going to stay on this not too long, but this was just us taking Mylars. They went out, they did a bunch of about 13 studies. We opened up all our Mylars. You can see the chaos it kind of created. So we might now further our TUS collection into, when I say that, I mean the TDK, the traditional ecological knowledge, and start doing it using a smart pad now instead, so that we don't have to re-digitize this stuff. We have a new system that we're going to start creating. We've had Goldar actually help us create a tool, an application tool, to take those Mylars now and run them into our GIS. We have a manual. This is kind of how the tool looks and sets up. So you can put in your interviews, the group involved, participants, and any kind of biography that goes with that. When we got the cliffs came in, right away we just wanted to see where the facility, the processing facility was going to be and the location from our community, so we quickly mapped that out to get some distances. We've developed resource development inventory. This is another big project that we're just kind of starting. We wanted priority levels. We deal with a lot of mining proponents, and we really want to make sure that we're involved environmentally, what they're doing and stuff like that. So we created this RDI to, and then we consult, like we have a consultation report, so we can write in anything, any concerns we feel about different projects, whether they're solar panels or whether they're wind farms that come in. I don't necessarily do this part. We have other staff in the office that does things like this. This is just an idea to give you what we're using our GIS for. It also links with access, so all of our proponents are in lists and access that we can bring back into our GIS as well. And here you can see now this is an attribute table which has some of those ones that have been spatially represented in our GIS. We're still working on these processes. This is just a map of one of the components in the area of concern. We use it for forest management plan, environmental monitoring. These are water sampling sites that we got involved with. You can see the Norman property, that's a mining company that's been there, our mine that's been there for many, many years. It went through a closure plan recently, but you can see that there's a lot of, we're getting our community involved. They trained our community to do the water sampling. Environmental assessment reports, GIS is a tool that our environmental coordinator uses all the time when she's doing her. We use it for an ecological land classification, use imagery even to kind of signal out the areas for that. Pictures, all this is hyperlinked right within our GIS database. Land use planning as well. Our community is pretty small, so some of this stuff isn't as hard for us to do when it comes to that, but we use it, it shows all of our dots again in our development areas, phases we're looking at developing. We brought it into the youth. We tried to get, them using it a little bit and get their input of what they want to see in our community. Again, picking heights of elevation. We were putting in a telecommunications tower. So we scoped out using a DEM, the best height points and where, to get the best line of sight to our community. We just built a center of excellence as our community command office building, and so we wanted to make sure that signal was going to get there. We use it for planning. This was architectural that came in. The layers were brought in. We wanted the medicine wheel represented here, and it's actually represented well now, but when the architect had first given me their drawings and I put it in GIS just to see what it would look like, they had our circle up, they had it not in the right direction. So thankfully I did bring it into GIS, and they brought it back to the architects and said, hey, you gotta fix that circle, we want the medicine wheel, it has to be north and south, it has to be rightly aligned. We use it in our housing, got building footprints in some of them, I don't see them here, but for our septics, our wells, we have a lot of campgrounds in our community. unfortunately, but we want to start monitoring them because there's a lot of outhouses and things like that, and where they put in their wastewater and stuff like that. So we're just starting to do some more mapping on this kind of stuff. Waste diversion we use it for. We created biodiversity. One of our colleagues in biology went ahead and did this. I can probably click on this. I think it'll work, and it'll link us to online, Esri Online, where she's created this invasive species map. So it'll load up here. Then you can see, she got the data from LIO, a lot of it, that was already here, but if I click on any one of these points, she also has a table. This one doesn't really have much in it, so wrong one to click on, but she's still updating this. Try this one. It's not mine, so they're gonna look at me. I can't find her invasive species. They're all the First Nations, it looks like here. Wetland, habitat type, unknown, not listed, okay. So she's still updating this, but this is just an example of what she's using it for. She's still trying to create the invasive species through here, so. Land claim analysis, like with our addition to reserve, there's a lot of mining claims, a lot of patent land going on. We're looking at where we can actually spread our land to. We don't really have much option. And then we have like the environmental, like here you've got some of the wintering areas of certain kind of moose habitats and stuff like that. And then we got the forestry for forest resource inventory. Like I said, I'll go through some of these quick, but it just gives you an idea of all of the things we're using, like geology, all of this stuff goes into one of these closure plans, habitat areas, species at risk as well. And that was the site. We actually found out that there was a wetland that used to be there at one time, so that was through Narcan's data. And then also we've used it to do some historical mapping, canoe routes. This was a map that was done by Craig McDonald that we just wanted to kind of have a better visual of it, and so we kind of re-established it using his data. Just in a looking bit. We use it for our canoe journeys just to show where they take place, and yeah, that's about it for me, just to give you guys an idea of how GIS is being used.
So when Lindsay asked what kind of tricks and tips we had, one thing I wanted to do, and a lot of times people don't talk about cartography and what makes a good map and what makes an ugly map. There's a lot of ugly maps out there, so I'd like to just talk about what makes a good map. So this one is just some fictitious, actually it's just world data that I pulled in. I didn't make it of anything in specific. But there's a few things on here that I just wanted to point out, and how can we fix it to make it a more readable map, and how can we portray your data so that it's easier to read for anyone to see. So right now, if you're looking at this, there's a few things that I can see that I noticed right away. One thing is that I have no idea what's a road and what's a river, because they're both in black lines. Sometimes, because of negative space and positive space, if this was unfamiliar, it's Vancouver Island over here on the left-hand side, Vancouver being right in here. It would be hard to tell what was water and what was land. If you were unfamiliar with the space, you may not know what's what because of just because of the way it's colored. Scripted text, never use scripted text. You leave that to the medieval times on their maps. So let's go through and take a look at this and see how we can make it into a much more readable map using some cartographic standards. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this British Columbia off just because it's in the way at the moment and it's way too big. And so right now I can see that the border of my map, this is just an 8.5 by 11 page, and the border of my map it's already touching the side. So there's no way that it will probably print the whole thing on the page. So I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. I just want to make sure that I get all my data when I print it. I'm just going to move it up a bit. The next thing I'm going to do is, if I look at my map, I can see that I've got a scale over here. It's 1,952,463. Other way around, 3 and 2. That's a crazy scale. That just doesn't make sense. If you put a scale bar in there or a reference scale of that number, it doesn't make sense. So let's round it off to 2 million, because that's a number that we can all associate with. And you'll notice no difference. That small amount of scale is not going to change the difference in this map. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the water and land. So, what color is blue? What kind of color is water? Always. Please say blue. Water is always blue. So, changing the type of water, you can either go into your title, or you can just double-click on your in your table of contents, which is on the left-hand side. You can just specifically click on the color, and you can go and pick a new color. I'm just going to pick some defaults right now. One thing about water is that a lake, it's a polygon. Cartographic standard is if you make your water blue, the outside shoreline is always blue. So I'm going to change that line from a black, and I like this blue down here, so I'm going to make it a blue. I'll hit OK. So already we're starting to see water. Land, let's give the land a color. We don't want to be prejudiced to water. So we'll just give it a, don't make it a dot. Let's give it a tan. I like tan. We'll just make it tan. There, stands out a little bit better. So now we can see the relationship between water and land a lot better because we've given each of them a color. Next thing, let's look at this boundary file. So right now, our boundary, we've got the United States and Canada here. We've also got, because this is a boundary file, it is going all the way around the shoreline because it's saying what's Canada, what's the States. And so one thing we want to do is get rid of all those lines that are actually going around the shoreline. So we're just going to give it this line here, our actual boundary, a symbol, because we don't need it all the way around here. We know that that's a shoreline. So let's go over to our boundary. And one thing I'm going to do, right now, it's a single symbol, so I could just leave it as that red, but I want to see what else there is in the database. What kinds of things can I give a value to? So then we go and look at it. If we pick on categories, we can look at the unique values in the table. So we're going to pick on a field. So these are the fields that are inside my database. If I'm just going to cancel out of here for a second, if I right-click on my name in my table of contents, and then I open up the attribute table, I'm going to see all the data that's currently in this file. If I wanted to add more information about it, I can add another field and then add the information to it. But we're going to take a type of line. So we're going to take that, use the field called type, because I can see there's a number here. Not sure what it is, but let's take a look and see. If I double click on the categories, and I pick type, and ask me, what are all the values in that field? I got a whole bunch of numbers. I'm just going to hit apply. I want to see what all those numbers are. Let's pull this down here, out of the way, and refresh it. Just need it to draw. There we go. Okay, so I got all kinds of colors. What I want is this line right here. I want this blue line because that's my international line. So this blue line looks like 39. To be sure, I'm going to pick my identity button. I'm going to click on it, and up comes, it's type 12. It wasn't 39. I'm going to check this one over here because that's the extension of it, and it's 12. So I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to just pick everything. I'm going to get rid of everything but 12. All I want is 12. And I get rid of them. I'm going to turn this off, so I'll hit apply. Refresh it. So now I see I've got my blue line there, number 12, but I still have all these lines here. That's because I didn't turn off my other values. So it still sees all those other values in the field, but I don't want to show them, so I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to change my line to a dashed line showing an international boundary. So down here under our are symbols that we can choose. There is one for international boundary. I tend to just use dashes and some different types of dashes for international boundary, but there is one here somewhere. Here it is, boundary. I don't like the gray, so we're gonna change it. I like red for a boundary. And we'll use those dashes, and then we get narrower. Okay. So now I've changed. Okay. I don't like that symbol because it's got that black line that makes it look like there's a black line there. So I had to choose a different one. I do like dashes, so I'm gonna go back to the dashes. Red. Okay. So now already we're starting to look better. We've got water now, we've got land, so we can tell the difference. We've got a boundary showing the United States and Canada, and it doesn't go all along the shoreline. We don't need to have it all along the shoreline. We can assume where the lines are. Rivers and roads, I still have no idea what one's a river, what one's a road. On our rivers, rivers are always blue. So I give it that same blue that I use to go around my lakes. Another cartographic standard is that your rivers are always 1 point less than the boundary of your polygon for your lakes. So if you remember, I'm just going to click on, I'm going to make it a 0.3 for a line. I'm going to give it blue. If I go and click down here on my water for my polygon for my lakes, it was 0.4. Polygon, the outside line on a lake is always 1 point larger than it is for your rivers. That's just, again, it's a cartographic standard and it makes it stand out more. So now we can see we've got some rivers. They're blue. I don't know if it shows up there. Not too great. It shows better on my screen here. So I can see I've got my blue lines. They're not named. We don't know the rivers. So why don't we name the rivers? Give ourselves some locational information. So again, we're going to double click on our heading. We're going to go over to our labels tab. We're going to label a field. We have to turn it on. It has to know whether we want it on or off. We're going to turn on a feature, and then we need to know which field is it that we want to label. So it's probably name EN for English. And again, there's a cartographic standard for how you label your water. Again, it's the same blue as you used for the river. There we go. Water is always, always, always italic. So give it the italic. Now, the size of it depends on the size of your map. So if I was making a map that was, say, a poster size, I'm going to have to use a lot larger size of text because to make it visible. On something like this, I could probably use, because it's a small page, think about it in Word. What does an 8-point type look like compared to a 12-point type? Same size. So you need to give it that, that idea of how big it's going to be. I'm going to leave it at 8. 8 might not be the one I'm going to use, but we'll try it now. The one thing, though, you need to check out is placements, placement properties. How do you want your text to be on that line? Do you want all your text to be horizontal on your page? Do you want it to follow the line? Do you want it to go through the line? Do you want it to go above the line or below the line? Again, cartographic standards go curved line, curved, above the line. So if you've got your river here, your name is going to follow that river, italic blue. Again, remove duplicates. You don't want to have a river that's this far across your page and it's labeled 10 times because it labels it each segment. If you've got a line that's broken up into a bunch of different segments, you don't see it on your map, but your label is going to be labeled 10 times. So make sure that you remove your duplicates and you only see it once on the line. So we're going to apply that and hit OK. Refresh it. So now we can see that we've got some text following the rivers on our map. Next thing is our roads. So we've got probably several categories of roads on here, but now we can see that at least they're black so that we know that these are now roads, not rivers. So let's go take a look at what our roads look like. And again, we're going to classify our roads based on, let's see what's in the field, in the file. So we're gonna go to categories and unique, and we're gonna pick something. So I'm guessing that it's type, and I'm gonna hit all category, or all features. So I've got 1, 2, 3. It's not very descriptive. I don't know what 1, 2, 3 is. So if I hit apply, if I move this over and hit apply, at least I can see maybe what it is. You can choose to show all those 1, 2, 3. Maybe I only want the major highways, and that's exactly what I'm gonna choose. So it looks like the 1s are here. Let's do 1s and 2s. 3s just look like they're green here, and it actually looks like ferry routes. So I'm gonna turn off the 3s because I don't want to see the ferry routes, and check it off so I don't see it. 1s look like the major highway, I think. I don't know Vancouver area well enough. Let's say, okay, so 1s, we're gonna give it a highway. Highways are usually made, provincial highways are usually always red. And in this case, I'm gonna make it a 2 just because it's probably a good size for this size of paper. Secondary roads, which I think this is, are always black. Tertiary roads are sometimes gray or orange. And resource roads are usually gray. So now I've got on here, at least I can now see that I've got the major roads coming in, and these are my secondary roads. This one goes up to Whistler, and these are the major highway, Trans-Canada highways. The last thing we're going to look at is population and these horrible text names. As I said, for labels, anything that's scripted is not to be on your map. Use something that's very easy to read. So we used to have Helvetica, Universe. Those have been replaced now by Arial and Calibri. I like Calibri. It's a fairly new font. Very easy to use. Don't use Times Roman because it's got serifs on it. Serifs are those little things that stick on the tops and the bottoms of the ends of the lines that have a little hook or something. Nasty. Don't use those on a map. You want something really crisp and clear to be able to read. So under my labels, I've used this one here called Mistral. Kind of sounds medieval even. So we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to use Arial or Calibri. Let's use Arial because we all know that one. Again, that's pretty big, so I'm going to try it out at, say, 10. And it doesn't need to be bold and apply. So now it's much easier to read. It's a decent size. Okay, and I'm going to make those dots. So the first thing that, if you pull this map up straight away, first thing you're going to see that jumps out at you are big black dots. We don't need to see big black dots. We've got other information on here that's probably more relevant than the black dots. So we're going to make those smaller. Typically for a city place, we can either do categories based on population size, and I think the database has that. But at the moment, I'm just going to put on here, for lack of time, I'm just going to make it a small little gray dot. Go down to 10. We'll see if that's good or not. If it's too big, no, that's too small actually. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to make it a little bit darker because it's hard to see. I'm going to boost it up to about a 14. Yeah, so now it's a little bit easier to read. Couple of final things. I hate north arrows. Hate north arrows. There's no reason to even have a north arrow on a map unless your data is pointing in a different direction than up. So every map you ever get, north is always at the top. That's what we, North Pole, South Pole. There's no reason to have a north arrow on a map. If you feel you must have a north arrow on a map, make it extremely small. So, and not scripty like this, so that, leave it again in the medieval times. We're going to change this one, we're going to change the style. I like using this one because it's very, very plain, and I'm just going to hit OK, and I'm going to make it really small because I always bury them on a map. There's no reason to have it, so I just bury it in the corner because it's just, you don't need it. Again, text size, so again, we've got some scripty text going on here. Make it crisp and clean. So I'm just going to double click on it. Actually, I'm going to use it on my toolbar. I'm going to go up here. At the moment, it says Bauhaus. I'm going to change that again to Arial so that it's plain and matching the text that's already on my map. No more than 2 fonts on a map. If you need to have something that shows up a little better, make it crisp font, but no more than two different fonts on a map. Again, I'm going to make this much smaller. I'm going to make it about a 28. There's no need to have it so big. This is an 8.5 by 11 page. I'm going to add on some different legend information. One thing about a map, never use the word map in your title. It's already a map, we know it's a map. I don't need to say map of British Columbia or British Columbia map. This is a map already. The same with legend. If you're inserting a legend, we'll put a quick legend on here. You don't need to have the word legend in your legend. It's already a legend, we know that. Okay, we're going to insert and we're going to go down to legend. Everything that's possible for me to use to put in my legend is on the left-hand side. What I want to show is on the right-hand side. If I did not want to show any of these, I could just move them over to the other side. I'm going to, I think, yeah, we'll use all these. And so we hit next. And I just use the defaults because I'm going to make it into a graphic anyway. And I hope it doesn't crash because I'm going fast and hitting the button too many times. Finish. Okay, so here's my legend. Can I just move it over here? You can see I've got the word legend on there. Sometimes it comes up and asks me if I want to use the word legend, and I don't ever, and I would take it off. But in this case, I've just got, this is now a graphic. If I change a color here on the land, it's automatically going to change it here, because the two things are linked at the moment. I always add my legend the last thing I do, because I want to design and make it what colors and everything I want, and then I'm going to make the legend last, because I'm going to unlink my connection to the map, because I want to be able to put it where I want it on the page, and I want to be able to change some titles. So I'm going to convert this now, this legend, to a graphic. And then I'm going to group everything. And group it again because it tends to group all these things together. Okay, a bunch of things I don't need. I don't need the word legend. I don't need this road. I don't need type. I'm going to change that. So actually, all of these I'm going to delete. This pop places, that doesn't mean anything. I'm going to put communities in or cities for a title. Number 1, because these are things that are found in my legend over here, they don't mean anything. I could change it in my table of contents and it would have automatically changed it there, but I can easily do it here as well, so I'm just going to do it here. I'm just going to put highway there and secondary road. And rivers is good, and this is international boundary. So now I can put these wherever I want in whatever order I want. I usually group the polygons together. I'll move it up there. I always put the line work together. So I'm just going to move it so that it's spaced appropriately. And I can then move a couple things over here like this. Select these, move them over here, and visually line them up. The cities here. If you had a long list, you could go through and actually there's an align. You can align them so you can select a bunch, right click, and go through all the aligning to make sure everything's lined up. But for the lack of time, I won't do that. Last thing I'm going to do on here is put on a scale bar. Even though this is a thematic map and we're probably not going to scale it off of it, we're going to stick one on. So we're just going to add in a scale bar. And I'm just going to use this one at the top and hit OK. Comes in as miles. I don't want miles, I want kilometers. So I'm going to change this to kilometers. And I'm going to shorten it to km after the scale bar. Don't want it 120 long. That's good enough. That's 60. I'll just put it right over here. Okay, so huge difference between, just by using some simple cartographic rules, and I printed out 2 different ones. So we went from this ugly, nasty looking map to something that looks something presentable that you can read your information on. So just using some very simple cartographic rules, you can make a really good looking map that's going to get your information portrayed. Thanks.
Thanks, Pat. Thank you for